Broadcasting from our studio in Ocala, Florida, I'm Brody Barcode.
I'm Ryan James.
And welcome to the Parlor, your hub for independent art and entertainment, as well as a platform to showcase independent artists and entertainers abroad. Now that's gourmet. Hanging out with us in the Parlor this evening is the amazingly talented independent artist and sculptor, Miss Nilda Comas, and also the incredibly talented independent artist / graphic artist, Mr. Tito Comas.
If you've seen our videos before, you've seen our interview with Mr. Comas. And if you haven't, you ought to check that out.
Absolutely. So, welcome. How you guys doing?
Doing great. Thank you.
Great. Thanks.
Good evening. Good evening.
Glad to be here.
I'm sorry?
We're glad to be here.
Yes, we're glad that you guys are here. We see that you're in your workshop this evening.
I am in my studio, yes.
Very nice. Now, I heard, or actually it also read, that you are in the process, Miss Nilda, of working on an 11-foot marble statue. Is that correct?
Yes, that is a great honor because the person that I'm doing, I'm in love with her. The more I know about her life, the more I think that she deserves having a sculpture at the U.S. Capitol in Washington, D.C., at the National Statuary Hall. So that's really wonderful opportunity for me to being trained all my life for a job like that. And I was very lucky to get it and be the one to do this wonderful person. So it's exciting.
That is so amazing. How, just curious, how did an opportunity like this come about?
Well, it was a competition, and it was a nationwide competition. So I applied, and there were 2,200 people participating, sent applications, and I sent mine. And, one of those things you just sent, and then it went down to 600, and then 50, and then 10. And when there were 10, they asked us to come up to Tallahassee and give our presentation at the Florida Capitol. And when I walked in, there were 10 of us, 9 were men.
Oh, wow.
And that was, so I was, excited. I said, oh, well, I don't know. But I made my presentation, and I said that I could work in bronze and I could work in marble. And so no one else in the room could work in marble.
Oh, wow.
And the U.S. Capitol in Washington, I said on my presentation, I said, when I think about it, I think of marble. And I think of the Lincoln Monument, and I think of the Washington Monument and Martin Luther King and the buildings and the Capitol National Statuary Hall, which is what we're competing for. The history is that the beginning, all the sculptures were in marble.
That's cool.
And the lighting it was designed for that. So I was thrilled that I could have an opportunity to do a sculpture in marble. And at the time, I didn't know who I was going to sculpt. They were only hiring the sculptor. So to do the sculpture. And later on, the legislature of Florida voted for Bethune, and it was almost unanimous. There was only one person didn't vote for her out of 10 different people they had chosen for them to vote.
So you won yourself a lot of work ahead of you, huh?
Yes, but it's really not like work for me. It's fun, and it's I've met such interesting people. I learned so much about the history of Florida through this person, Mary Bethune, and also traveled to Maysville and met where her family, where she grew up, saw the log cabin. She was one of 17 children, and one of two who were born free, not slaves.
Wow.
That's
So
awesome.
the more I learn about it, the more I learn about American history and the South. And, it was like then at that time, for a woman, and she was Black, and then African Americans at that time didn't have what they have now. And so how they were earned, she helped for them to earn a lot of what they have now. So she was an incredible character
That is so incredible. Oh my God.
person.
And I bet your brother, Mr. Tito, is incredibly proud of you. I'm sure
I
he's got
sure am.
But he's gonna come. He's gonna come to Italy, to our other studio there, and he's going to bring me his help and his ideas too. So
That's fantastic.
yes,
We
I'm
were
planning.
kind of expecting that we were going to have that interview while you were in Italy, but I guess you're going back, I take.
Yes, in January.
Oh,
Yeah.
So how far
At the end.
along are you in the process? Like how's it coming along so far?
It's coming along quite well because I had already done 3 different models. I'm working actually 4, but I'm working the classical way, and that is you first start with a small model and you double it until you get to the size that you need. And that's what we are doing. I have made here in this studio in Fort Lauderdale. A lot of my sculptures here are really models, maquettes. I work out my ideas here, and then I take the model with me to Italy, and there with a facility of larger studios and assistants and great materials, and the town is geared to help sculptors.
Wow.
So we have a way to move the sculptures around. It's very easy. All the the sculptor studios are equipped with that. So we have ropes from the ceiling, and we have all kinds of things that help with the host, and then the armatures, model makers. Everything is, you just call and they come that same day or right next, as soon as you need. So it's really a dream working there. And so that here is more like my think tank.
Yeah.
And then I take the work there, and like this one, I made 1 foot in plastiline, and I took that to Italy, made it 2 feet in clay, water-based clay. Then from 2 feet, I went to 4 feet. From 4 feet, I went to 8 feet. And the base adds to the 11 feet.
That is an extreme talent to be able to sculpt the same thing over and over and still expanding the size.
Well, each time you get more detail each time, and you work out. That's why it's good to go double, and you can correct anything, because the larger a mistake can get, when it's a large, right?
It's still just amazing that the classical way, as you were saying, is to do that, and being able to reproduce the same thing every time in a bigger scale and adding more detail or taking away other details. That's an extremely
I'd like to add, can I add a couple of things? Because she's not going to tell you. When you said that I was, I should be really proud of her, I'm extremely proud of her. And she's broken a lot of barriers. She's the first woman to have a sculpture in the hall in Washington, D.C.
Well, I am the first Latin American woman.
Yeah, I was going to say.
I'm the first Latin American woman.
The Latin American woman, yeah. And I believe that Mary Bethune is the first woman in the...
She will be the 10th woman in the Capitol, but she will be the first African American.
Okay, so there's a lot of barriers that
incredible.
Yes, and I have the most exciting thing to tell you too, and that is that the marble that I'm using comes from Michelangelo's cave.
Oh
and this
God.
is one of the reasons that I'm working the classical way, because right now many sculptures are enlarged with robots,
Mm-hmm.
but they have some mistakes. And with this amazing piece of marble, it's a statuario, the purest of the marbles, coming from the Alps in Carrara, Italy, and there cannot be any mistakes, because this is a beautiful, beautiful piece that now the cave is closed. And in the last 30 years, they had not excavated a piece that large, that it has no mistake, no problems with, no cracks, no. The color is, it's white, it's beautiful, it has all the crystals. So there's no mistakes to be done, in this piece of marble. So
how did that come about, being able to attain that marble from Michelangelo's cave? Like how did that come up?
Well, I work in the most important marble studio in Pietrasanta, which is known around the world for the marble work. And when I first got there, I was basically an apprentice, and I couldn't make a living as an apprentice because you don't get paid.
Right.
Then later on, I became an assistant to pretty well-known sculptors. I've done some work for Botero, Ivan Timer, some other people in the studios, that are very well known. But the first, when I arrived, I was running out of money, and I said, what can I do? And I thought about it. I said, well, I work in the best studio. I'm meeting all these famous sculptors from all over the world. I can speak English, Spanish, Italian, a little French, and I can converse. And so I knew the caves, because every time that I was fascinated with marble, and that's why I went there, to learn how to carve marble. And so I was fascinated with going up in the beautiful mountains. And every time that the studio needed to go up there, and there's 13 caves there. And so I would go. I said, can I come? Can I come along? And so I met the engineers, I met the caves. They all have a number, and they're all in those mountains, and they quarry different types of marble, many different types. And so I did see Michelangelo's cave. And so the owner of the studio where I work has a great relationship for so many years with those places. And I went up there, and they said, oh no, a block that big? Come on, we haven't had anything like that in over 30 years. So guess what? I come back to Fort Lauderdale, and 2 weeks later, I get a call, very excited, way at 5 o'clock in the morning, from the owner of the studio, Cervietti, and he says to me, you won't believe, I had a call. I was waiting till it was later for you to wake up, but I have news. We got a piece perfect for the work. And they're about to, they locate it, and the more they excavate, the piece gets larger and larger, and no cracks. And so I told them, he tells me, I told him to cut and bring the block down. By the time the block was in the studio, there were 6 people betting to double the price of what he was going to pay for it. And that same day, he had to come up with his own money and pay for it. So now, just before we started cutting, when I was there in October, and we started cutting the block, a person who is the largest marble dealer there came over and said, are you sure you want to cut this piece and not sell it to me for 3 times?
Oh my God.
So we're very careful with this piece, so I am using the classical way to cut it. And it's a little slower, but it's very precise. And actually, it's beautiful because you have more of the human touch, and you can make changes as you go. With the robot, it just starts carving day and night, and you can do a lot of changes because it's and a mistake can happen because not all the marble is the same hardness. So sometimes the machine can jump, it hits a part that is a little harder.
Yeah,
so
you can feel it as you go.
Yes.
Oh my God. So, Mr. Tito, aside from being beyond ecstatic and proud of your sister, have you had a chance to see the caves, or will you get a chance to when you go to Italy? Will you
I have been there a couple of times visiting my sister, and she's had some shows there, and I've been to the studio, but I had never been to the cave, to Michelangelo's cave.
Oh.
And but I will be there. So yeah, so I'm going hopefully at the end of January or February, and I plan to stay for a while until the project gets completed, or whenever she needs me, as long as she's there. I will be.
Oh, we'll have a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's a great place. She's got an apartment that is, I guess, it's over 500 years old, right?
Yes, it is. It's It's right in the historical area, right downtown.
Pietrasanta is an incredible little town. It's first of all, there are no cars allowed. It's bicycles, and you have to walk. And it's all about artists, musicians. The whole town is it's an artist town. So
yeah, they call it Little Athens.
Yeah, and they have in the corner of the piazza is the Michelangelo bar, and that's where Michelangelo signed the papers with the Medicis.
Oh, yes.
So I mean,
and his lawyer lived across the street, and it's like.
So it's a really amazing place. Really, and you look from there, you can look and see the mountains in the back, and it looks like snow, but it's actually the marble. It's beautiful.
Must be very mystical going into that area.
Yeah, and it's in the middle of Tuscany, so you can imagine the food is like amazing.
We have the best food, the best wine, the views, the weather, so much is nice, and people.
They get together and they go up to the mountains to get their water once a week.
Yeah.
And they go get their mushrooms. They go, mushroom hunting, and it's a really cool town.
Yeah, really, those rascally mushrooms. Got to hunt them down.
Yeah, you guys should come. Yes.
Oh, that'd be amazing.
That would be incredible. Wow.
Yes.
Hopefully we'll be able to travel sometime soon after all this mess is over with.
Yeah. With
it will be over.
Travel,
yes.
How has that been as far as in the process? As far as the going back.
I'll say it's a little bit scary, of course. And I've taken every precaution that I can take. And the good thing is that not so many people are traveling right now. So my worst flight was to leave Fort Lauderdale and get to Washington, D.C. After that, I flew to Switzerland. I thought it was pretty safe flying that way, and then into Florence. And once I was going to Europe, there weren't that many people flying. And I'm a resident, so I don't need any type of other papers to go there. And so I'm going home to my apartment there. And so if I had to go to a hotel, I could not have been able to travel. Right. And also, if I weren't a resident, it was. Right. And once I was there, it's very safe. It's a small town. People are very careful. Everybody wears masks. At the studios, they take your temperature. You sign a log when you were there, in and out, and keeping distance. The studios are large enough, so it's very safe to be, there. So that's. It made me feel comfortable. Actually, when I came back, I was a little bit scared because I see people not wearing masks. You get used to that, seeing people with masks on and being careful and keeping distance, and people start getting too close to you, and I get kind of nervous.
Yeah. Right. So, Mr. Tito, with regards to the traveling from your aspect, I mean, is there basically just kind of like a quarantine process? I mean, being that you're coming from
I'm going to have to get the shot, the vaccine, in order to go there without having to do the quarantine. I think that's right, Nilda?
Yeah. Well, yes, I'm not sure what will happen, but I think so. Once you have the shot, then you should be able to travel. And I did the quarantine, even though I'm a resident. Everybody quarantines when you get there, and I had 10 days of quarantine, and so that's.
I went to Ecuador. I just got back a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
It was very safe there too, very safe, and didn't have to quarantine. Because you have to take the test, to prove that you're negative.
Right.
And it's got to be within 10 days before you leave here. Then you take it in, and I'm telling you, it's like no matter where it was, even in the middle, up in the mountains in the Andes, 12,000 feet. If I walked into a store, a restaurant, whatever,
right.
First they got a mat on the floor where you have to wipe your feet. With alcohol. Then they take your temperature. Then you have to. I was there for 17 days. Didn't see a single person without a mask.
Right.
Then after they take your temperature. Then they spray you, front and back.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then they give you the gel for your hands, and then you walk in. Otherwise, you're not allowed to go in after all that process. So I feel really safe.
So, and that was basically just, I mean, whether it was a restaurant, whether it was a little.
No matter where. And if you go to a restaurant, they bring you the stuff on a tray. So the person that put it in the tray had the gloves, and you're the only one to touch the food after that.
Right.
So, I mean, it's amazing. So you feel, and there was no lockdown at all. Everything was open, going because of the measurements that they're taking,
Right.
But anyway, that was
steps. I mean, the additional steps that they're taking, but it makes so much sense. You know, I mean,
yeah, they were on lockdown. They were in really, really bad shape about 5 months ago.
Yeah.
I mean, really bad. And then they took that and the protocol, and it's like you don't see anybody. And if you have your mask below your nose,
right.
People look at you and say, "Hey." Yeah, everybody takes care of each other. That's really the way it should be.
It's definitely a difference in our government and how things are taken care of as it is over there,
right.
overseas or.
Yeah.
And I think that's the way it was in Italy too, right?
Yes. All those the grocery store, you wear gloves and they see how many people are in the store. Only a certain number is allowed.
Right.
And then they closed all the restaurants and all the bars, and only the stores were open till 6 o'clock. And then after that, they were closed, and everybody goes home. Schools are open, and businesses are open, but not restaurants or bars.
And that's as of now. It's still no restaurants, no bars, or have they starting to?
We got to have our priorities straight.
Yeah, well, they're closed, closed totally.
Wow, gotcha.
So I mean, they're open for takeout,
right?
But they're not open for drinks, or they're not open outdoor dining. None of that.
Right.
So, outside of the current situation in the world, what got you into sculpting? I mean, and what are some of the particular steps that you take and tools that you would use sculpting marble?
Well, I started sculpting actually. Tito brought some clay and gave it to me as a present. He said, "Here's some clay." He was doing some ceramics, and we were in college, and he said, just, here's some clay. And I said, well, I'm a painter, and this and that, and I'm not going to do ceramics. So, he said, oh, well, whatever, here's some clay. So I sculpted a head, I did a portrait, and I started. And once I got my hands into it, I loved it. It was like love at first sight. And it reminded me when I was a child, I used to make puppets. And I did some characters for our puppet shows. We used to put together puppet shows every summer, and they were pretty intense workshops. Um, and we had our friends come over. Tito and I used to teach classes. Can you believe? We were just kids, and we teach people how to do all these things. And so, I mean, kids, you know, they were younger than us, but we were only about 10, 11. So,
so Mr. Tito, is this where it all began? As far as the history of how everything started for both of you, going back to when you were kids?
Yeah, we grew up in a family that was very art oriented. My dad was a fine artist. He had a master's in fine arts and did some sculpture and did some painting and taught at the university there. And then my mother was kind of a musician. She played the piano, classical music. So we grew up around art most of our lives. And Nildita always wanted to be an artist since she was, since I can remember. And I kind of, being the middle child, I always followed her, and she was always the leader. If she wasn't the leader, she wouldn't play. You know what I mean? So, and then we both went to school in Texas, that's where my dad had gone to art school, even though he went to Syracuse for his master's. And then Nildita got back, and she decided that she wanted to be a sculptor. So she went to Italy about, 28, 29 years ago?
I was there, yes, before, but then 27 years ago, I decided to get an apartment there and start learning how to carve marble and be a professional artist, not just part-time artist. I always had a studio. I always was an artist, and I never considered myself anything else. It was just part of just who I was. And I did other things to make money, but that's who I was, just an artist, So
that's incredible.
And you went to the academy in New York for your master's.
Yes, I had a Andy Warhol scholarship was offered to me, which was the highest scholarship ever given by the school. And the director of the school called me and he said, "Listen, we're giving you the highest ever given. I think that you need to think about this." Because I said, "Well, I don't really think about going over to New York and do this," but yeah, it was highly recommended, and I was already going to Italy. And I did notice that one big thing that all these master artists had in common, I got to know them pretty well. They all went to really good academies. They had academic training of all the techniques. And I liked that because when I went for my fine arts degree, it was like, okay, this project for the semester, and here's this other one, and this and that. And, there wasn't any real guidance as far as techniques or too much about anatomy or anything, And so I wanted these disciplines because I said, well, I need that. I really want to get better, and any way that I could get better is to really know these techniques. And they all suggested, yeah, why don't you go? New York has like one of the top 10 best schools in the whole world. And I was like, well, maybe, so I did send an application. And then they called me and they said, we want you, we want. So they gave me this Andy Warhol scholarship, and I did end up taking it, going to New York. 2 years, I majored in painting and sculpture, both. So I did both programs. I was super busy. I had assistantships with 3 professors, so that I could, also supplement my income. So I never left the academy. I was there, till very late. But the experience in New York was wonderful, meeting professional artists, just like I had in Italy. So it was a wonderful
you've done a lot
experience.
of projects, not only this one. You know, you've done projects that are all over the
Oh
world.
yes, I have all this, during this 27 years, but also I was offered some very good with Parsons School of Design in New York, and I offered some really good jobs there to teach after I graduated cum laude from the academy. And I said, no, I don't want to become a teacher professionally full time. I want to do my work and I want to become a sculptor. And so I had to go back and be an apprentice, because I didn't have the techniques that they needed to work in marble. And mostly they work in marble, and Pietrasanta is known for that. So it was a great experience to learn from master sculptors there who had all these techniques learned from the artisans, not from the art schools. There you learn critical thinking and some like perspective, that type of thing. But perspective and anatomy, it was a very rigorous program. But as far as the techniques and the tools, that I learned from the artisans in Pietrasanta.
That's incredible.
What you won an award in Europe, right, for the top woman sculptors at the.
I won in London. I won the 142nd Women's Exhibition from Westminster, which is sponsored by the Royals. And I won the first prize, best in show, and also most liked by the crowd. So the 3 major awards, I won them in that exhibition. And so they invited me to, part of the prize was monetary award, but also to go to Highgrove and see Prince Charles' collection and have tea with Prince Charles and learn about his work and so on. And so, it was a very exciting thing, because Westminster, when I went there for the award, it was very, very exciting and very prestigious award. So it was, like, and I love going to London and going to the National Gallery, and all the museums are free there. So it's so wonderful, go in and out, check something out, go back.
I gotta add something to that, because she's a tango dancer. So she does not book anywhere unless there is a tango place closed, so that she can dance while she's visiting, I thought
I had to have my brother say that, right? No, it's fun. It's
So what kind of tools are used in sculpting on marble?
Well,
obviously very sharp. It's not like the TV commercials where they got the wooden hammer and the chisel. I mean, I know.
No, we do. We do that for the details. Yes, we do. We have all kinds of chisels, but we have air tools. It's air power tools, and so that makes it really the hammers, everything like that. We have we have a lot more power than Michelangelo had to work with.
Right.
Yes.
I mean, you're not like standing on top of this block with a big jackhammer trying to.
Well, yeah, that happens, and the disc, the disc. Yes, lots of control for that, and it's it's not an easy
grinder.
Excuse me.
It's like a grinder with the disc on the.
Yes, end, right.
And then the process you gotta.
Yeah, we have all these power tools, but then the details we do by hand later. It's really wonderful to be able to chisel, and those are all handmade tools.
And lots of different angles and lighting in order to make sure you're getting the details that you want.
Yes,
right?
We have natural lighting, and so that you don't have harsh lighting that makes it like if your shadows are too deep, then you carve too deep. You may really make a mistake. So you need the same type of lighting, and the studios are made with north lighting and beautiful studios there. So
the studio that she works at has the largest collection of original plasters in the world. The plasters that were done by Michelangelo, the David, the Pietà, all that are in that studio, the original.
Yes.
And
there's about 2,800.
28.
About 2,800, yes. The largest private collection in the world, yes.
It's an amazing place.
Yes, we have museums that are always calling the studio to buy the plaster cast, like Canova's originals, and then the only copy ever made of the David is there in the studio. The plaster, the government is always checking it in case something happens to David. Then they have a model to go and copy and correct. And the same thing with the Pietà, the only one. So it's a very interesting place, and I teach my workshops there twice a year. I have 10-day workshops in Pietrasanta, and 2 weeks for them to be there, accommodations. But we work in the studio half a day, and I use a lot of those plaster casts to help with a lot of the anatomy and so on. And then we go to the Carrara Mountains, we go to the museums, we visit studios of my friends who are master artists, master sculptors, painters. So it's a very exciting place, and they every time they go, there's something happening, some concert or some film festival, something interesting, plus the food and the wine.
Another thing I want to add is that she was in the team. There were a few that were picked to restore the frieze on the cathedral in Washington, D.C. So she did a lot of that work. That was years ago. But
yes, that was in 1999.
Oh, wow. Yes. But it was all marble.
Yes, it was the largest relief in the United States, and it was done the original by George Carr, and he could not carve marble, so he sent the model to Italy to be enlarged and carved in marble. And so out of the 13 people that worked on it, 3 were chosen to go to Washington, D.C. and work on the final details under 7 different types of lighting that they would have in the cathedral, the basilica. So we went, and at that time was the first time that I really visited the National Statuary Hall, because we had a private tour with Ickley Shaw, congressman, saw us on CNN, and he said, "Nilda, I saw you on CNN. Would you like a private tour with the curator of the Capitol?" I said, "My goodness, of course, sure." So I saw that for the first time.
Why would you say no?
Right. So it was exciting, and little did I know. Here I was with this fellow who starts crying in the middle of it. And I said, "What's wrong, Leo?" And he's in front of a sculpture, and he says, "This marble sculpture I carved when I was 18 years old. I never thought I would see it again. I never thought I would be in the most important building in the whole world where all these decisions are made that affect everybody." And so never thought I would do it. And so I said, wow, I looked around and I said, yeah, it must feel incredible to have a sculpture here. And so, yeah, that was like, so nice.
Is marble your preferred medium to carve?
No, it depends on the theme. It depends on the sculpture. Okay. Some are better in marble, some are better in bronze. And I still love also terracotta, the natural clay, fired.
And I was going to ask, speaking of bronze, the 11-foot piece that you're doing in marble, you're also doing that as well in bronze, correct?
Yes, I am. And that will be for a park in Daytona Beach, which that's the place where Dr. Bethune went to and founded the University of Bethune-Cookman. So cool. It's going to be at the end of the street where the university is, the main buildings. And so at the end, you're going to stand on the street and you will be able to see her with the background of the Intercoastal. It's a new park.
That's amazing.
And it's called Bethune Boulevard. So
nice.
And one last quick technical question on that note. So as far as the difference between working with bronze, that of working with marble, would you be able to kind of explain that as far as just working with one?
Yes, actually, it's really working out well because either one of them, the original work is done in clay.
Right.
And so we have a mold made, and then we have a plaster of the sculpture that was in clay because, you know, the clay breaks and all that. So we keep the original in plaster. Mm-hmm. And so for then, we use this plaster to copy into the marble with an old system called the pointing system from the Greeks that Leonardo da Vinci perfected during the Renaissance. But then the bronze, we make a mold, rubber mold from that plaster, and then it's filled with wax, and then it's called the lost wax method, which is what we use for the bronze cast. But when it's in the wax, I'm able to get a lot of details and textures that will not be in the marble, because the marble, I want it to be very smooth.
Right.
But the bronze, I'm going to have some texture, which will be really nice to see in the bronze, you know. So it's a different media, different look. And then there's some details that I did now when I was retouching the wax piece. They're the same size. And in the books, they want this 7 titles and I on the spines. And so I was able to do all that detail in the wax that I couldn't do in the clay. Oh, wow. So now for the marble, I'll be able to copy from those to the marble instead of from the plaster.
That is incredible.
So it actually is working together. You know, there's things that I can see, and then later on I think, well, when I work in the marble, I'm going to do this because I noticed it when I was retouching the wax. And so I wanted to add a little something here and there. So I'm doing that. And I'm also, it's interesting, I'm going to do the rose that she's holding in one hand. Mm-hmm. She will be holding a black rose, which it will be carved from black marble. Ooh, and it's very symbolic. Yeah, and then on the other hand, she will be leaning on the cane that Franklin Roosevelt gave her. They had a beautiful friendship, and she was one of the people that was a counselor to him, you know, started the Black Cabinet, and very historical times. So we look forward also to seeing it. When they went together to sign for the United Nations, the first enactment. And so when they went to Switzerland, they took her to an English garden that had these black roses, and they gave her a black rose. And then she wrote a beautiful little essay about the black rose and the garden, international garden of different colors and unity and so on. So it was beautiful. And that she took that black rose to be sort of like her symbol on her. It was on her writing paper, on her desk. There were dry black roses that I saw in the museum. So I asked, why black roses? And then they told me, and that got my idea. Well, she's doing this with this hand, and then she'll have the historical cane that they said was by her bed when she passed away. She always had it with her, even though she didn't need a cane to walk. So it was like, you know, from a symbol of such a friendship that she developed with the Roosevelts.
That's amazing. That really is amazing. I was just gonna say, and I apologize because we're just about out of time, and God knows we could keep talking for hours.
Yes, no,
but
it's fun.
No, it's been incredibly fantastic. I was just gonna ask though, as far as for any artist up and coming, or working to get to the level for where you're at today, or even for you, Mr. Tito. Any words of advice, any words of encouragement for those up and coming artists?
Well, I would say that continue to work on what you do best, and whichever art it is, or music, whatever. I think that any business that you start and you do professionally and seriously as a business, get up every day and do some of it, then you will be good at, and so
perseverance,
yes,
and never
I would
no
say,
for an answer.
right.
That's right.
And you know best, what's good for yourself, pretty much.
Well, thank you again
so
much, Miss Nilda. Thank you so much for hanging out too with us, Mr. Tito.
Yeah, this is great.
I'm glad you had a fantastic trip in Ecuador. I'm sure you got 100,000 photos for your.
Oh, beautiful! He's such a great photographer.
Yes. I took this trip. I took over 500 photographs.
Oh my!
So I and you got my files with over 10,000 now.
Did your finger get tired? The trigger finger?
It's all iPhone. You won't believe it.
Well, I mean, tapping. You know how like those people were playing Pokemon Go.
right. But I had a big 35 millimeter and all that for a long time, and the iPhones came out, and it's instant and it's perfect. So
absolutely.
And you have a few books coming out, right? Published.
Yeah. I'm working on my third one.
Oh, that's fantastic!
That's awesome. Too cool.
Well, hopefully we'll all be able to catch up again really soon. To be able to see where everything's at. And lastly, Miss Nilda, I mean, as far as timelines on the statues being finished, is there roughly any kind of?
Well, I believe that it will be finished by the end of April.
Oh wow!
And we have an unveiling of the sculpture with a ceremony in Pietrasanta before, like a send-off party and celebration with the mayor of the city in front of City Hall. And people from here are planning to travel for that, and some government officials. And since she will be the first African American, will be important. And so we hope by then we have the vaccine working well and everybody getting it, so as many people can come and enjoy that festivities over there. And then we are planning to unveil it on July the 10th, our birthday. But it all depends how all this COVID goes, because it's the capital and so on. But that's, we have a goal. So that's
wonderful.
Right.
Well, and I was just going to say, just with us wrapping up, any links to any of your work, websites, you name it, we'll have that posted in this video.
Okay, I think it's very good if you Google my name, Nilda Comas. There's a lot of information there. So much. I was just looking through it today, and you can see a lot of my work and different. Yes.
And your website.
Yes.
Okay. Wonderful. We'll make sure we have those links in the description. In the meantime, thank you very much for joining us in the Parlor.
Have a good evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. Fantastic.
Always a pleasure.
Yes, always a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a great one.
Have a happy one. We'll see you soon. Take care.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, guys. Bye-bye. Have a good evening.
You too. And for everybody out there, make sure you hit the subscribe button, hit that notification bell to make sure that you get our updates of what's going on. All of our interviews are going to be going up on our podcast page for our website. So please, you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, some of the major platforms. So you'll have that link in the description as well. And as soon as they get posted, you'll know. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a wonderful night from the Parlor.